Ghana, one of the economies to watch, one of the fastest growing economies, and we're told it has a lot to do with the fact that they're now an oil producer. How did that impact on their growth figures for Q1?
True. Most analysts expected double-digit growth, not just for the first quarter, but for the remainder of the year, on the back of the commencement of oil production. And indeed, we saw growth of 23% year-on-year for the first quarter, largely driven by industry, which grew by 35% year-on-year. But the interesting, or the surprising growth number was that of agriculture at around 39% year-on-year, which led to that large or significant number of 23% overall.
Let's talk about that contribution of agriculture at around 39%, spurred by cocoa and cash crops. There is a concern that this is not a sustainable position going forward.
Well, yes, that's the interesting part of it, because the agriculture sector comprises of crops and cocoa. You've got livestock there, as well as forestry, which produces timber for export. The crops and cocoa composition is about 1/5 of total GDP, and the cocoa part of crops and cocoa only makes up 12%. So we find it a bit surprising that cocoa grew by such substantial numbers and led to such strong growth in the agriculture sector. And as a result, we expect it to slow. We'd expect that strong growth from cocoa on the export side, given the speculation that there's been smuggling from across the border, which has boosted volumes. But on the value addition side, we don't expect such strong growth.
Yeah, and obviously with Cote d'Ivoire recovering, that may have an impact as well. Now, although oil is being attributed for the industrial growth we've seen, we're told to be a bit cautious about that, to not forget that there's been stellar performance on the construction side of the economy in manufacturing. Explain?
Yeah. True. The growth in industry was not entirely due to just the introduction of oil production, but we've got manufacturing that grew rather strongly, double-digit growth, as well as construction. On the construction side, the recovery is largely attributed to the fact that the arrears are being paid by the government. If you recall, construction did rather poorly over the past 18 months to 2 years, due to the fact that the government was unable to pay the contractors. So those numbers have improved quite substantially, allowing for industry overall to do rather well.
Services, Yvonne, we're told that this is a large component of the Ghanaian economy, but growth has been really and truly modest, around 7%. What's the story there?
You're right. Services makes up around half of the economy. It's interesting that you call 7.1% modest. I think it's because now we're comparing to these strong numbers we're now seeing in agriculture and industry, which are going to taper off definitely on the agriculture side. On the services side, part of the underperformance was due to financial intermediation, which tends to be rather volatile during the course of the year. History has shown that full-year growth is relatively strong in the early double digits range. Therefore, that's for financial intermediation. We have been a bit concerned about the recovery in credit growth numbers in the case of Ghana, so that may have impacted that sector, but we're not worried about its performance for the remainder of the year. Tourism did rather well, actually. They've seen a significant improvement in tourist arrivals. We think this is predominantly business travel. So on that side, they're doing relatively well. On the transportation activity, that's also boosting that sector. But as I said, it's all relative now, given what's happening in the oil sector.
All right. Now, we did see on the stock market side, Yvonne, an IPO that was launched recently for Tullow Oil. And we know that quite a few oil marketing companies are coming onto this market. That should boost its profile. But so far, although the economy is performing really well, this doesn't seem to be an economy where we're seeing a lot of capital inflows and heavy FDI outside of oil. Is that something to be concerned about?
Well, I think the focus right now is the oil sector, given that it's new and that's where the activity and the interest is at this point in time. The challenge for the authorities now is, in order to diversify the FDI that's coming in, is to use the oil revenue that they're getting to invest in other sectors of the economy, which they're trying to do, partly with the help of the Chinese. And then you're going to see FDI going into other parts of the economy. You've also got developments on the pension fund side, the introduction of private fund managers that's being anticipated later this year. On the back of that, you should see greater activity on the capital market in the case of Ghana. And on the debt side, the 3-year debt instrument still remains attractive for foreign investors. It's offering good yields. The yields in other economies are also improving, so there's greater competition there. But yeah, that's still an attractive play.
Let me ask you a basic question, Yvonne. What is Ghana doing right? For instance, a lot of regional economies are starting to feel the pressure of rising inflation, international food and fuel costs. Ghana's got inflation declining. As a result, the Bank of Ghana insists on loosening its monetary policy as opposed to tightening. So in a lot of areas, Ghana just seems to be going against the grain.
True. Ghana is in a very fortunate position, actually contrary to the other economies, in that its inflation rate is not accelerating. It's actually been edging downwards in recent months. The other issue is experiencing strong growth. So they're on the opposite spectrum from, say, Kenya, which has weak growth and accelerating inflation. So they're in a position whereby they don't need to tighten, and which would actually constrain credit growth and subdue economic activity. So I guess Ghana is in a fortunate position in that the fiscal consolidation we saw over the past couple of years has helped result in the lower inflation that we're seeing today, and then it's coincided with the commencement of oil production that's pushed up growth. So it's a combination of good policy as well as the timing of the oil production.